My pleasure.
Let's go from anger against corporate cronyism to anger against big government. Tonight in Music City, Nashville, Tennessee, hundreds are gathering as part of the We Stand With Gibson rally to protest this summer's federal government raid of Gibson guitars and the government's continuing overreach. Is all this anger on the right and the left leading to changes in big government and big business? Here to discuss is the CEO of O.co, formerly known as Overstock.com, and good friend of Freedom Watch, Patrick Byrne. Patrick, it's always a pleasure. Welcome back.
Judge, great honor to be on. Thank you.
All right, what's your take about what's going on in the land? Hundreds will gather in Nashville tonight to protest a raid by the FBI that disrupted what Gibson Guitars has been doing and using and importing for 30 or 40 years. Thousands are demonstrating in major cities in Washington, D.C. and in Boston, and the crowds are chanting, "End the Fed" and "No more war." And the most libertarian of Republican candidates is winning the Value Voters Summit straw poll. How do you see all this shaping out, Patrick Byrne?
Judge, I think it's a great day for America. I think it's overdue. There's a common denominator to all of these protests, which is it's really against the oligarchy. You know that our system, we've talked about before, our society, our country has two power centers, Wall Street and Washington, D.C. Over the last few decades, maybe over 70 or 80 years, Wall Street has gotten Washington under their thumb, and they've formed an oligarchy. And I think that the common denominator of all of these protests are people are realizing we want to live in a republic. We don't want to live in an oligarchy. So I absolutely, and you know I'm a total Milton Friedman guy. Milton was my friend. I totally support these Occupy Wall Street guys on their main objective. Not all the silly stuff, but their main objective, which is to get rid of or reduce Wall Street's influence on our republic, I think is entirely sound and healthy.
Do you ever think that we'll see a day, you and I will see a day where the government will stop using taxpayer dollars to pick winners and losers, and we'll just have an even, fair, flat system, and a tax system, and basically leave entrepreneurs such as you, importers such as Gibson, and even the banks that want to be left alone, alone?
I think that day will come, but unfortunately it's only going to come after a Soviet-style deep event. I don't know what it is, but central planning has a way of self-reinforcing until it reaches this crisis. So we're going to, and we've been practicing one form of central planning. It's corporatism, it's crony capitalism. It's just a different way that the Soviets tried to achieve the same thing. That's going to reach its crisis and crash, and then maybe after that, there'll finally be an opportunity to revisit principles and to govern from principles. And you have the right principles, and your show supports the right principles. So I'm actually, although I dread what's coming for our country, I'm hopeful that it'll create a window to where we can get back to our right principles.
All right, Patrick, you're painting a very gloomy picture. I have to ask you this. What is coming that you dread?
The deep financial crisis, 2008. The opportunity is going to come again for this country to decide whether we want to bail out the bankers, bail out the center of our financial system. I pray that we don't do that. Last time we drew a ring fence around the center of our financial system, and the U.S. Treasury said we'll put the full faith and credit of the U.S. behind them. We should do just the opposite. Ring fence them, let them burn first. Let the large mega banks on Wall Street burn. Support the regional banks and the smaller banks, but get Washington out from under the thumb of this oligarchy.
All right,
in
the New York State Comptroller, who monitors jobs in New York, says that 22,000 jobs have been lost in the financial community here in New York City. 22,000 since 2008, and another 10,000 are like to be lost in the next year. Wouldn't the government get the message that federal control and central planning is having the opposite of the effect that the government claims it wants?
Well, remember, the federal government isn't monolithic, and the truth is that these policies, while they may be bad for the United States, there's a small number of people whom they benefit. And those people in the financial system, at the mega banks, right, they understand that they're benefited, and they've taken the time to go and buy their own personal senators and regulators and congressmen. They got them on speed dial. So until we get that connection snapped, this country's going to keep making the bad choices it's been making.
Patrick Byrne, always a pleasure, no matter how gloomy your predictions are. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Judge.
Ahead of the jobs bill voting, there was some Capitol Hill occupying. Occupy Wall Street protesters